Welcome to episode 52 of the Talking Friars podcast. We're back after a long month or so layoff. I'm Ben Fadden here with Jacob Zimmermann. Was working for the Padres, working for the team, so they alerted me that I could not do the podcast during the time that I worked for them, kind of like a conflict of interest sort of thing, even though I'm, as diehard of a Padre fan as anyone. So it was kind of weird, but hey, I was working for the team. I totally understand. But now that I'm not, I was just a little brief stay there just to get some experience. We're back. Jacob's here. We have a lot to discuss. A lot happened through that month or so layoff, or that break that we took. So before we kind of get into this series, this quick 2-game series, recording this on a Sunday where the Padres didn't even play, which is really weird. But 2-game series that they just had with the Angels. But first, let's kind of talk about the major news that happened during the time that we weren't recording. And that's starting with Fernando Tatis Jr. Moving to right field after, kind of getting activated off of the IL. He was at shortstop, obviously. He had all those shoulder subluxations, fielding, diving for balls, base running, hitting. But they move him to the outfield because they think that is going to, kind of like a numbers game. It's just going to prevent him from having as many opportunities and being, as involved as he would be in the infield. He's not going to get as many opportunities, they think, in the outfield. Will he dive? Sure. Will he go into walls? Sure. But again, it's just, will he hit? Yes. Will he base run? Yes. But they're just playing the numbers game. So what have been your thoughts so far, Jacob, on what you've seen from Fernando in the outfield? I think he's looked good. There's been a couple times where it's like, oh, he, didn't know where the wall was or whatnot, but that's any transition to the outfield. He's there because of his bat and because of his energy and just how great he is offensively. So just what have been your thoughts on Fernando moving to the outfield?
I mean, I think they're just playing it safe, right now. They don't want him to hurt it anymore. I think at, short, trying to do too much. I know that can happen in the outfield, but, I think just limiting his opportunities, like you said, not trying to put him in situations where he's getting hurt a lot. But he's looked good out there, I think. I mean, for never playing in the outfield,
Right.
he's looked good. I mean, nothing really to complain about. He's not perfect, of course. I don't think he should be in center. I think Christian should stay in center. I think he should be in right. But I think that it's been all right. But I know that he wants to be at short. That's his thing. For now, I think that keeping him in the outfield is a good spot.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be clear. I think he's going back to shortstop.
Oh yeah.
It's just through this year. It's just for this year that they want him in the outfield because they want his bat in the order, and he's the most valuable player in the National League this year. And I think we've seen that because of, when he's hurt, even though he's been hurt, or he's been out for 30 games, that doesn't matter. That's because he's still producing. He's, leading the National League in homers when he's missed that much games. So they're putting him in the outfield now because they don't want him to have that shoulder surgery. Because when he has the shoulder surgery, he's going to be out for a prolonged, period of time. And obviously with the Padres a couple games out of a playoff spot, game and a half now, they can't afford to be without their best player. So that's the Tatis situation. Moving to Larry Rothschild getting fired, was this, surprising? A little bit to me, I think, because you don't really see a contender fire a coach, nonetheless the pitching coach
mid-season,
right in the middle of the pennant race. And so it was shocking because he was one of those guys that I think fans wanted him to be, fired, get him out of here, because there was a lot of guys hurt, a lot of guys, not performing up to the level that Padres fans, wanted them to do. So I'm kind of mixed on them making this move now, because there's, during the year, there's been times, at the start of the year, the Padres had the best team ERA in the league, through like the beginning of June or whatever. Yu Darvish was pitching great. Joe Musgrove was pitching great. Ryan Weathers was dominating the Dodgers. He was pitching great. Chris Paddock at times, had 3 or 4 consecutive great starts coming off that COVID IL. When, the bullpen obviously been good pretty much the entire year. When the Padres pitching was leading the team in ERA, was Rothschild being complimented, or was it just people just praising the players? Everyone was just praising the players. Look at Ryan Weathers, how mature he is at such a young age. But now, the flip side, when the team's struggling, it's not on the players all of a sudden. There's going to be people that will say, yeah, Ryan Weathers needs to pitch better. Blake Snell just needs to pitch better. Preller said that, in the post-trade conference, trade deadline press conference. But it seems to me that whenever someone does bad, you want to blame it on the coaches. When they do good, it's not the coach doing it, it's the players. Just that's the double standard, I think, a little bit there on the Rothschild thing. Ben Fritz and the whole new voice thing. That was another issue I had with Jace Tingler saying, oh, they needed a new voice. It's the same voice that's been there the entire year. You could go with the argument. Do you want to go with you could argue that, the Padres, Ben Fritz, the new pitching coach, interim pitching coach, he maybe had to shut his mouth a little bit because he couldn't get his message across because Larry was there. But usually bullpen coach and pitching coach, they're on the same page. So
exactly.
Having a new voice, it's not a new voice. So let's be clear, because that guy's been there the entire year. He was there last year. He interacts with these pitchers on a daily basis. So it wasn't a new voice. So that's my issues, was the double standard, the coaches kind of getting all the blame when things go wrong, because you're not going to fire the players. And then, Ben Fritz saying, being a new voice when he's already been there. So your thoughts on the Rothschild move?
I think it's just the fans, exactly, talking about that double standard thing. They need to learn to make the players have some accountability for being bad, and it's not always just the coach's fault. I get that, Rothschild, maybe there was something going on there, but I don't think that firing him at this time was a good idea. Just because, first you didn't talk about it with your players when you did do it. They had no idea. They said, Jace Tingler said that he didn't discuss it with anyone. I don't think that it was the good move right now. I think that it was going to happen in the offseason, yes, just because, we had all this talent and then all of a sudden that happened. But it comes back to that thing that's like, it's the players too, it's not always just the coaches. At the end of the day, the players are going out there, they're pitching. It's their skills on show, if, the coaching has a part of it, yes, 100%. But at the end of the day, a pitcher's got to pitch. And at the end of the day, I think that this move right now it's not the best for the team. I think, it puts a little, I don't know. It's a little weird one. It's a weird one, 100%. But it'll be interesting to see, with this new voice and the pitching coaching rotation. I don't know.
Yeah. One thing about, the new voice thing, and obviously, like I mentioned, that he's been there the entire year. But one positive, I guess, that you could say that, came out, that, you could argue that came out of this, and that I noticed watching games after Rothschild was gone, is that the bullpen pitchers, it seemed like they didn't really get up as much during games. Like Larry probably, no one's going to talk about this, but during games when the TV, the screen isn't on these guys, they're still, they could get up 2-3 times a game and not come in, or they finally come in the 8th inning or something, like a Tim Hill, and they've already thrown 60 pitches in the bullpen. And so that could factor into some, dead arm issues, some ineffectiveness, and you're just a little more tired than you should be. maybe that's because Larry has been, wanted the relievers to get up in the bullpen more than the relievers wanted to. And maybe the relievers knew that they shouldn't be getting up as much times, especially if they're not going into the game. Then Larry was making them get up because they know their body's better than he does. So maybe that's a positive. Maybe they're fresher. But that's the only thing that I guess I noticed that I don't think has really been talked about.
Nah, not really.
Yeah.
I kind of like though that, I guess another positive is, we did have like one of the best bullpens, and he's the bullpen coach, so I guess it makes sense a little bit there. But like, I don't know. I think it's just a weird move right now at this time.
Yeah. Let's see what else happened. Oh yeah, the Padres losing a lot of games to teams that
We
they
suck now.
shouldn't happen. This should not happen.
Ugh.
Let's painfully go through this, I guess. So
So where we
the
start the
Padres
Rockies.
had what was it? A 7-game lead in the wild card at one point.
Yeah,
Now
that's pretty high.
now they're a game and a half back.
Back.
And I saw that this was the first time that the Padres had gained games in the wild card on the Reds since like August 10th. And they didn't even play today on Sunday.
Yeah.
They didn't gain games because they won. They gained games because they didn't play and the Reds lost. So it's that I think that just shows that the Reds are going to keep winning games. The Padres' schedule gets tougher and tougher. And this stretch here in August, they should have played a whole lot better. They should have won more games. And let's just go through this here. I think they've lost 12 of their last 16 going into the Arizona series starting on Monday, 9:40 Eastern time. The Marlins, they won the first 2 games on August 9th and 10th, and then they get blown out. Then they lose the next 3 games to Arizona. That's a 4-game losing streak to teams that you should not be losing to 2 teams that are going to be playing for draft positioning in September. They finally win against Arizona when Fernando came back, hit 2 homers. But then they get swept by the Rockies. CJ Cron looks like, Albert Pujols at the plate.
Yeah.
They had an off day coming back home. Maybe this resets something. No, they lose a series to the Phillies, with 2 of those games being with the Phillies without Rhys Hoskins, who was arguably their best or second best hitter behind Bryce Harper this year. Games
if it wasn't for Cronenworth, we wouldn't have even been in that.
Yeah, Saturday was a game the 21st, where they came back and won on the wild pitch. That's a game they shouldn't have won.
We almost got CG that game, yeah.
Yeah, Nola was dominating. His brother was the only person that really did much off of him. That's just a game that they didn't deserve to win, but the Phillies pretty much handed it to them on a silver platter. And then the Dodger series, they get swept. That was probably the Diamondbacks and Rockies series were ugly. But you think that the Padres would have came out, maybe with more energy. I don't want to say that they had a lack of energy, but they just didn't have anything going for them. Was that them getting unlucky? AJ Pollock robbing a homer, having to face Walker Buehler against Blake Snell. And so you couldn't, Blake Snell dominates, and then you can't score 2 runs for him. And Jace Tingler, which we'll talk about right now, actually. Jace Tingler, that August 25th game, the day before they get shut out by the Dodgers, Grisham making robbing that homer was the only highlight of that game. But the 25th, that was the 16-inning game. Jace Tingler, what in the world was he doing there? A game that they could have won. So many opportunities to win this game. But Jace pretty much was one of those rookie manager type things. I get last year was a 60-game season, and that was his first year, but it really wasn't. It didn't feel like it. There was no fans in the stands. He was only playing limited opponents. It wasn't like the spotlight was so on him. There was a DH, obviously, so that made his job a whole lot easier.
Oh
And
yeah.
here, there was no DH, and he decides to not keep Ha-Seong Kim in the game as a pinch runner, and instead just decides to blow right through his bench, essentially. Using Marisnik as a defensive replacement for one inning,
Yeah.
putting pinch running for Nola with Kim, and you already pinch hit in the 9 hole for Caratini. So that meant that when Kim came out of the game, now your pitcher is hitting in the 5 spot behind your best 2 hitters. So that's pretty much telling Dave Roberts, here you go. Here's another chance to go win this game in the next inning, because you can walk your 2 of your best hitters in the lineup, not even, just take the bats out of their hands, essentially, and you can get out of this inning because you're going to get the pitch to Joe Musgrove, Ryan Weathers, and Daniel Camarena with the bases loaded. Camarena was a great story, but
He's not a hitter, though.
not a hitter, obviously. It was just a bad, there's an argument that there's no guarantee that Cronenworth and Machado would have came through. Yeah, but would you rather have Ryan Weathers hitting, or would you rather have your 2 of your 5 all-stars hitting? So I just don't understand what he was doing there. If Tingler is let go, which I don't believe is going to happen, Preller's already said he's going to be here for long term, at least next year. But if you're making a case, trying to go bullet points under Jace Tingler's name about why you should fire him, this is going to be at the top. I get that the Padres could make the argument too, right? That there's a DH next year, so he'll be a better manager. But I'm sorry, you knew that going into this year, and I think here's this, right? And maybe you could talk to this. I'll ask you this. I mean, isn't it kind of ironic that days after Larry gets fired, days after Tingler claims it was 100% his decision, days after that decision, that now he doesn't have him to lean on, and this scenario happens? Is that a coincidence? I don't know. Skip Schumacher, had him on the podcast, great guy, very knowledgeable. I'm sure that he'll take part of the blame too, because he's supposed to, provide Tingler with some of these situations that could go on. But at the end of the day, it all falls on Tingler. The buck stops there. So what do you think? Days after Larry gets canned, this happens.
Yeah, it's definitely ironic. It's definitely a funny kind of thing, but it's not funny at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know. Tingler, it was a skeptical signing to even sign him in the first place as our manager. I've never heard of this guy. But at the end of the day, you can't. Those are just some bizarre kind of, some managerial decisions. I think, especially it's against your rival, you have to win games now, and you're just blowing through your bench like that, knowing that you're in extra innings. You're gonna have to save some bats for clutch situations. Matchups here and there, but when you just blow through it like that, it doesn't make you look like a good manager. And I get that, as you said, Skip Schumacher, should provide a little bit of insight for him. Maybe the blame falls on him a little bit too. But at the end of the day, you're the manager of this team. You got to step up. You got to make better decisions than that. And as you said, it's at the top of the list now. If he were to hit the hay, get canned, it's definitely going to be one of the top ones that I remember.
Yeah, and you mentioned Tingler kind of being skeptical of him, if that's the right word, about when he was hired. I wasn't in the Tingler camp. You can ask my friends at school; they definitely know that. I was definitely more of a Ron Washington guy. Loved the experience. I wanted to kind of compare it a little bit to the Cubs. They had Rick Renteria. And they needed more.
Joe Madden at first, and then
They needed more experience, and they got Joe Madden. And then they had all the tools in place. They needed that veteran coach in Madden, and they ended up winning the World Series. I'm not saying that they would have won the World Series with Ron Washington or will, but I just think that when it can get a little dangerous when the GM and AJ Preller is kind of hiring a guy that he loves and they have a great relationship with, and kind of having that bias, right? Now, I'm not trying to say that this was a bad hire, if that's one game, but it was a game that they could have won, and they taxed the bullpen because of it. They made pretty much Dave Roberts look like an amazing Hall of Fame manager, because he just said, yeah, I'll just intentionally walk two guys in a row 3 times in the game. And he's the one that had 2 guys available off the bench in the 15th and 16th inning of this game. Gavin Lux, one of them, and Tingler had blown through his bench, 7 innings earlier.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a good look. It just was not a good look. And then, like I mentioned, they obviously get swept by the Dodgers. It didn't seem like they had a whole lot of life on the 26th, when they lose 4-0. Again, that Grisham home run robbery was like the only good thing that happened in this game, it seeed like. And that was, late in the game when it's,
Yeah.
yeah, it was already like 4-0 already. But really, did you really think we were gonna, win a series against the Dodgers when?
Not after we've been struggling against these really crappy teams. We got it didn't seem like we had any momentum or any fire to win. It seemed like, I don't know.
Yeah,
It seemed like,
and then especially when you're going into a series and game one, it's a bullpen day
okay, yeah.
against Julio Urias.
Yeah.
Bullpen day, game one. Blake Snell pitched great, but it ended up being a bullpen game, game two.
Mhm.
And then game three, Yu Darvish pitches great. He's back. But he just didn't pitch great.
No, he got it wrong.
You present that scenario before the series, and it's like, okay, they could get swept. It's not, it won't be that surprising. Just the pitching situation
Yeah.
did not present itself, going into the series as one that is a blueprint for success against one of the best pitching staffs in baseball, one of the best lineups in baseball that got Mookie Betts back in the series finale. So my point is, really, I mean, you expected it. You expected it. Did you expect them getting swept by Colorado and losing 3 out of 4 to the Diamondbacks and getting no hit by a guy who was a mechanic the year before, and getting blown out by the Marlins in the series finale? No, but you kind of expected the Dodgers sweep just because things didn't look good. So I guess your overall takeaways from, losing 12 of the last 16, if we include this Angels series, where another blowout on Saturday.
Oh yeah. We were talking earlier, I think, in one of our last episodes before we had to take a little break, that we had to win these easier games now, because we were going to get really challenged later in the year. It was going to be like a super tough end of the year schedule. We're playing the Giants and the Dodgers, but like seems like left and right, and we just folded. It seemed like we didn't win. It felt like we didn't win a game. With how many we lost, it felt like we were just never going to win a game. And then when we did win a game, it's like, oh, it's a surprise. Like, oh my God, we won a game? No way, you're joking. It feels like, we're back at the 2018 Padres kind of thing. Like, you don't expect to win. And I don't expect that with this team. We're a team that was chosen to win the division for the season. We had guys that come in like this, and it seems like, the bats aren't showing up. And when they do show up, the pitching isn't there. It's one or the other. And I don't know what it's going to take, but if we really want to make the playoffs, we got to go on a run against some really, really good teams coming up.
Yeah, and that 13-game stretch that we were all talking about and saying, oh man, this is where they can climb up the division or pad that win total before having to play, pretty much all playoff teams in September. They did not even finish close to 500 in it, and you're going in, you're expecting them to be what, 9-4. I thought I'll take 9-4 in a 13-game stretch against the Diamondbacks, Marlins, Rockies. Those are last place teams. last place caliber teams, you should not. What they go 5-8 against them, that should not happen. And we'll be looking back at the no-hitter game. We'll be looking back at the CJ Cron walk-off after, the offense finally gave you life, the Grisham tying the game, and the very next inning, Daniel Hudson gives it up. We'll point to Max Scherzer pretty much dominating the Padres, which is like our worst nightmare because it looked like we were getting him and then we weren't. And you feared that this was the exact thing that was going to happen. He was come into Petco Park and dominate and say, maybe you should have given up those two big prospects. They shouldn't have still, but you get the point. It's just really, really frustrating. Do I believe that they can make the playoffs still? Yeah. But my confidence, I should say, it's pretty much going down and down and down every time that they have one of those performances like they did on Saturday and they lose 10-2 to the Angels. So where's your confidence level right now in this team to make the playoffs, considering in September, let's run down the schedule here. Astros, Angels, Dodgers, Giants, Cardinals, Giants, Braves, Dodgers, Giants to end the year. It's not a good look.
No, it's not. That's a really tough schedule now that I'm even hearing it again.
Yeah.
I mean, my confidence level, it's been up there. I've been hopeful. Every time I turn on a game, I'm like, all right, this is the game we're going to turn it around. Every time I go into work, I walk out there, I see the guys warming up. I'm like, all right, team chemistry's back. We're going to get there, and then it just, I go to, it seems like the first inning, it just slowly goes down, inning after inning, game after game. It's getting hard, to watch this team at times, but I still believe that we will make the playoffs. I'm still hopeful that we'll make the playoffs. But we have to show up. We got to play teams that are going to make the playoffs themselves. We got to beat the good teams if we want to make it. And we've done that before in the year. Before this little 3-game sweep from the Dodgers, we were winning against them. We were winning against the Giants. We were winning against these good teams, just struggling against the bad. And now it seems like we're just struggling against everyone. So we got to win against these good teams. I'm hopeful. I'm never not going to be hopeful. Considering we've been Padre fans our whole lives and we've always sucked, and I've always been hopeful, I guess. But I'm still hopeful that we'll make the playoffs, and I'm rooting for the guys. Hopefully they can turn it around.
And that's the thing. Kind of the frustrating thing is, the talent's there, and it's just not really. You're not seeing that talent, really flourish on the field right now, and it's getting later and later and later in the season. And the Reds, meanwhile, let's look at the Reds schedule. It's just not. It's not a good blueprint for the Padres, considering that they're already now behind them in the standings.
Seems like they're playing the Pirates every other week.
They're playing the NL Central. I mean, NL Central is not a strong division. They play the Cardinals. They haven't been great this year. Detroit rebuilding. Chicago, the Cubs rebuilding. Cardinals again. The Pirates. Okay, they have the Dodgers. But then they go right back to playing bad teams. The Pirates, the Nationals. They have the White Sox for 2. But then to end the year, they play the Pirates again. Holy cow. How many games against the Pirates? It's like they didn't play the bad teams at all during the year. And now they get to play them when they have a wild card lead. It's just not a good recipe for the Padres.
Yeah, it doesn't seem
because, to be honest, I mean, if you want to expand it, the Cardinals they're in the playoff picture. And they're playing better. They're 3.5 back, so Padres are 2 games ahead of the Cardinals in the wild card race. But with that said, the Cardinals and the Reds play in a worse division. Yeah. And right now, really, right, all you need to be is hot And when the Padres aren't hot and they're playing, hard teams, it's hard to envision them winning. I'll say this, I can still envision them getting in because the Reds, maybe they end up collapsing.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to believe like the Padres, their run you can't play this bad the rest of the year, right? Well,
You hope, yeah. I
you
said
just
that like
gotta,
5 games ago.
you gotta hope that. Yeah, exactly. So you just kind of have to hope, looking at the standings, I don't I don't want to look at the standings every day because I feel like that it's like, okay, it's going to fluctuate every day. At the end of September, you can look at it and, okay, that's what's going to matter because that's the end of the year. But you can't help yourself seeing the Padres still not in a playoff spot when going into the year, it was the Padres, the Dodgers, and then everybody else. And the Padres right now are everybody else. They're not in that same class. It's the Giants, Dodgers, and everyone else. And even the Braves are a better team than the Padres are, seems like right now.
They're missing Acuna.
Exactly. So where do they go next? I mean, what percent chance do you think would you put the Padres at making the playoffs right now? I'd say it's probably a little less than 50%.
Yeah, I'd say about 40-60.
When they're not in a playoff spot, you can't put it over 50%.
No. But this team, they have the ability to get so hot at sometimes. It's crazy. When they're hitting and we got the pitching on lock, when Blake Snell's actually doing his thing, which he was doing his thing against the Dodgers, a good team. The team's just so good. Like when the bats are flying, when we're getting on base, when Machado's doing his thing, which I haven't seen a lot lately, especially after that home run robbery. I was at that game. It was a very sad scene. When Tatis is hitting, it feels like home run every game. We're not making errors in the field, which we haven't really lately, which is good. That's a good step. But it's just when this team's hot, we can do so many good things. It's just a matter of getting that, getting that confidence back up, getting that momentum back. It just isn't. It's a 40-60 chance for me. I feel like I can put it there confidently.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do kind of what Padres Twitter does sometimes and say, "Oh, we're done."
That place is toxic sometimes.
10% chance we're done. I'm not saying that because I know the talent's there. I know that the Padres. I do still believe, in my heart that the Padres are a better team than the Reds are. I believe that they're a better team than the Cardinals are. I believe that they're a better team than the Braves are. I know the Braves are not in this conversation because they're going to win the East, and so that doesn't matter. But I still believe that they're better than these teams that they have to fight with, at least St. Louis and Cincinnati. They're obviously better than the Phillies, I think. So I just think that giving up on them is that's not the right thing to do because we still have a whole month to play. There's more off days. They're going to get, Paddock back soon. Arrieta's throwing. I get that Arrieta is not, I get it, but he's still another starting.
It's another arm. Yeah, exactly.
Still another starting pitcher.
It's less bullpen days.
Lamet is going to probably be in the bullpen. That's going to help. So they're getting their reinforcements back, and hopefully that can put less. There's effects to those guys returning. That can hopefully put less stress on Ryan Weathers. He doesn't have to feel the burden of being one of the top the only three starters in the rotation. And then at Blake Snell, if Blake Snell keeps pitching like this, that trade looks a whole lot better.
Oh yeah.
And even if they don't make the playoffs, having Blake Snell pitch like this at the end of the year is only going to give fans, the front office, confidence that we made the right move. Yeah, did he not perform well this year? But he Yes, but he has that opportunity to do so
To just finish it off, yeah.
next year,
Finish off, yeah.
finish it off. Will that mean that the Padres have to pay him more money? Yeah, but if you're going to get this type of Blake Snell, you're willing to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
This Angels series, just quick 2-game series. They played well in the first game, not so well in the second game. The second game, there was a lot of nothing. I mean, they just didn't really have a lot of fight. It seemed like in them. So I don't really want to focus on that game. Just kind of throw it out.
Let's focus on
Joe,
that first game, though.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Joe Musgrove.
It's a great game.
Wow.
CG, yeah.
He's been struggling a little bit, right? Having to grind through some starts, but he played, pitched tremendously, obviously.
Oh,
Did the umpire give him a couple of calls? Yeah. But he pitched great.
Yeah.
Complete game. And a complete game is a complete game. So let's see, what was Musgrove? How many He had like 9 strikeouts, 3 hits.
It was 9 or 10, yeah.
Yeah, I get that the Angels, they don't have Trout, they don't have Rendon.
That's still a good team, though. There's Jared Walsh.
Yeah, their strength is the lineup, not the pitching. So, I mean, if Blake Snell and Joe Musgrove can pitch like this, and Darvish can get back to some, version of how he was pitching to begin the year, that's the top 3 Padres, starting rotation that they were envisioning going into the year that they haven't gotten this year at all. At the same time, Musgrove, Darvish, and Snell are all pitching great. That just hasn't happened. And if that does happen, then that's 3 out of the 5 days, that they should be in a position to win. And hopefully, the lineup can't keep struggling like this the rest of the year. So that's a good recipe. To get to a good recipe to get, back in it.
That's the goal right now.
Whether that's, getting past Cincinnati or getting back in it, meaning just keeping the same, gap between the Padres and the Reds, keeping that with that 2-game gap, and you just see what happens. Hopefully, they lose that Dodger series, and maybe that's where the tide turns a little bit. But
Harris come up clutch.
Yeah. That's what else do we have to talk about? We already covered Musgrove, obviously the rotation. Things. It's one of those things. The positive outlook that I'm taking away, at least as we're done with this episode, is the Padres. They're down, right? But the only thing they can do is go up.
Yeah.
And so you just kind of have to go with that, right? You just have to go with that belief that it can't keep going like this the rest of the year. Because if it does, then that's it's been worst case scenario these last few weeks, especially with the, bad competition that they were playing, at least on paper. And if it keeps going like this, then I think changes would have to be made, right?
Yeah, they're gonna have to be made. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like just a wait and see what happens. You just got to be hopeful. If you're a real Padre fan, you can't be one of those bandwagon fans that aren't showing up to games anymore, bashing people on Twitter. You just got to be hopeful. Got to take it game by game. To think that you're going to win every game, then maybe something will happen. You never know.
All right. This has been episode 52. We're back. We're going to have probably some more, interviews coming up, some more, consistent podcast episodes. So stay tuned to the Instagram, the Twitter, the YouTube, just to, make sure you don't miss out on any content. Jacob Zimmermann, Ben Fadden. Thank you very much for listening, watching, wherever you're getting this, and go Padres.